I'd like to start tonight with a poem.
Somebody said, this guy hates me, but he also hates Trump? Why does this guy hate me? I don't even know this guy. I've never fought with this guy before, have I?
I'd like to start tonight with a poem. First they came for Colbert. And I did not speak out. Because I never did a late night set on Colbert.
He's a Hassan fan, they said.
Then they
He's a
came
self-hating pro-Pally Jew. Gotcha.
for Kimmel. And I did not speak out. Because a couple years ago, Kimmel stopped doing late night sets on his show. Then they came for Fallon. And I did not speak out because I did Fallon last week.
Wait, is that an original statement, or are you stealing it from somebody? Because I'm yoinking the out of that if that's original. I'll never get over how the HHS head sounds like if he drank orange juice with pulp, he wouldn't make it, LOL. That's a yoink.
Then they came for Seth Meyers, and there was no one left to book me. Guys, we are all going to need to make room in our hearts for our friends and family who, for some reason, were only radicalized by Jimmy Kimmel getting canceled. I know it's confusing. I don't know why it took this long, but we need the numbers right now. It's hard for me too, because I don't think Jimmy Kimmel is very funny. I wish Trump went after Seth Meyers first.
Can I just say that of all the cultural like break moments for me, the one thing that I'd never got was people that like Jimmy Fallon more than Jimmy Kimmel. I feel like Kimmel was easily funnier than Fallon. I'm not sure, trying to be mean, but oh my God.
All these Republicans claim that liberals were celebrating Charlie Kirk's assassination. No one celebrated that more than Republicans.
Bro.
They're thrilled about it.
True.
You see them comparing Charlie Kirk to Jesus Christ.
What? Everything is so weird right now in our country. How do you have a memorial for Charlie Kirk? Did I miss this? How do you have a memorial for Charlie Kirk and like none of his fucking family speaks? Did he not have like parents? Was this guy born in a fucking conservative laboratory? This guy did he have siblings or anything? Or are they all dead? Is his whole family gone? He has parents and a sister?
Come on, Jesus had way more.
You'd agree Conan was the best, right? I would say Conan O'Brien was the best, but he's also, I think, a little bit more like millennial coded. Like, I think boomers didn't like him. They liked Leno and Letterman more. I don't know why. Fuck boomers.
You see them comparing Charlie Kirk to Jesus Christ. Come on, Jesus had way more holes. You can tell the Republicans, they don't care about Charlie Kirk. They didn't follow his work. They've been comparing him also to Martin Luther King Jr. Charlie Kirk hated Martin Luther King Jr. That's like when Trump died, people said, oh, he was the RuPaul of politics. It's like, sure, they both like fracking, but that's about it.
You fucked me over. My boss keeps complaining about your tweets and I can't defend him. Why is your boss talking about me? Did you bring me up to him? Tell him I'm based. Tell him to stop being a fucking snowflake.
I don't know, I think tonight, instead of Jimmy Kimmel's slot, they're putting on like a special of Charlie Kirk, and they always, you know, they pull the videos where they're like, look, here's Charlie Kirk talking to a black man, he didn't say one slur. I looked at some of the videos. I looked at the YouTube for Turning Point and Charlie Kirk. Here's some of the titles for his videos. College queer is all talk, no facts.
Yes.
Charlie Kirk wrecks deluded pro-trans long-haired hippie. Charlie Kirk demolishes pro-trans non-binary feminist. I think Charlie Kirk's the only person who's done more crowd work with queer people than me.
Okay, I'm going to start banning for this. I don't know how many times I can say this. Destiny, have you changed your opinion on Project 2025? It seems like it was coming back into the spotlight, but I seem to remember stating it wasn't as big of a deal as the media was making it out to be. I have never, ever, ever said that. What I have said is that I don't think voters care about hearing about Project 2025. That was my statement from the very beginning. It's my statement to now. That's always what I've said on it. I just don't think voters care to hear like this is the plan book of what they want to do, Project 2025. It didn't never seemed to me like it was playing well with voters. I feel like focusing on shit like abortion or whatever was more effective. That was my feeling on it. I've never said that nobody cares about it happening or any of this stuff happening. I don't think that it played well with voters. That was just my impression.
I think Charlie Kirk's the only person who's done more crowd work with queer people than me. None of this is funny, obviously. He left behind a wife and 2 kids, which is how you know Israel didn't do it. I will tell you something. I'm 37. I've seen some eras of politics. It is nice that Republicans are the ones who are getting offended again. Something about that feels nostalgic to me. It wasn't fun telling my conservative stepfather, you shouldn't say that. I feel like nature is healing. Because Charlie did not. I think it's fair to joke about this stuff because Charlie Kirk was the one who said a few gun deaths are worth it for the Second Amendment. I would never support anything that could potentially hurt me. I personally think we should kill all the bees. I don't care the ecological impact. I just want people to know if I ever get stung, that's a tragedy. I can do all this because I know people are getting in trouble for Charlie Kirk jokes, but guess what? You can't get fired if you don't have a job.
Wow.
I come from a fucked up family.
Stop. I didn't mean to click that. Oh boy. What do you want?
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, what's up? So specifically last night, or I guess I watched it today, but last night you had the debate with Myron, and in the very beginning, I feel like you kind of conceded ground, or you agreed to the point that Israel, was an occupying power of what you refer to as the West Bank and Gaza, which is simply untrue. Specifically because we have a customary principle in international law called uti possidetis juris, which provides newly formed sovereign states like Israel the retention of internal borders of their preceding dependent area. So Israel cannot occupy its own territory. In the same way, if Ukraine took back Crimea, Ukraine wouldn't be an occupying force taking back, or they wouldn't be occupying force over Crimea.
Sorry. Okay. My brain is here. Do you watch a lot of Israeli legal people?
Yes, but I read a lot of case law, and if you want to look at the 1986 or like the 2007 like Burkina Faso versus Mali cases.
Sure. Okay, I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to dismiss you. There's a Israeli legal scholar I think that I've talked to once or twice, and he made the same argument. I understand the argument in principle, the idea that you can't like occupy your own territory, and so calling the occupied territories doesn't make sense. I feel like there's 2 big issues with this. So the first one that I'll start with is that I don't know if it's fair to say there was ever like a super big agreement on whose territory is owned by who, like following the expiration of the mandate. I know that by the letter of the mandate, the pro-Zionist legal argument would be that there was supposed to be a single government that would emerge from the mandatory era, and then it would inherit the entire country within those borders. And since that was the only stable government that emerged, therefore the entire territory of the mandatory Palestine area would have naturally gone to the Israeli government. It was an illegal occupation by Jordan and Egypt after the 48 war. Et cetera, right? So Israel can't occupy its own territory, right? I'm familiar with that argument, but I feel like even if we I don't know if something can be like de jure but not de facto. Right? Actually, I guess definition that could be the case because de facto is when it's against whatever's written or whatever. Like it's pretty obvious that no stable solution like ever emerged from this period where there's like a single unifying government across the territory, right? So I feel like that. So I'm not fully convinced by that argument on that first part. Do you want to respond to that? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so specifically, that is the whole point of Uti Possidetis Juris. You are correct. The British mandate failed at creating a Jewish state because specifically that was their legal obligation in the Mandate for Palestine, the original memorandum that they adopted and approved in 1922. However, Uti Possidetis Juris is the principle, if we just go back to Latin America or the, destruction of the Soviet Union or former Yugoslavia, when we look at, the creation of the states that came out of that, there wasn't inherently a treaty with all of those that created the borders. So they used the principle of Uti Possidetis Juris to inherit those borders in the same way as...
I'm aware of that. I'm not familiar of that doctrine being applied in any scenario where there are two like competing governments with different territorial lines, and then that legal principle being used to just decide to kind of like wipe one away and say that the larger, stronger one inherits everything. Usually, I think these are fought out in like military conflicts. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, there wasn't a larger one. There was only one entity that emerged from the British mandate. The Palestinians didn't declare independence, and the Arabs invaded. So since Israel is the only newly formed sovereign state, they would be the only new sovereign state that has a legal claim to the land. If other states declared independence, yes, there would be some arguments between that, but there was only one state that declared independence.
Sure. I think I kind of sort of agree with this conclusion. I think I get there kind of in a slightly different way. Where I would say that, I mean, like you had the country of Israel. There's two big problems. One time, people try to rewrite history and say that there was like a strong Palestinian statehood identity even prior to 48 that I don't think ever really existed. So I mean, I do agree that like Israel was the only country that emerged from there. And then people try to do this weird rewriting of history saying that like Jordan and Egypt were kind of like just holding on to the Palestinian territory until it would become a state. But there's zero indication of that being true. In fact, Jordan annexing the West Bank seems to point contrary to that. And Egypt just didn't give a fuck about the Gaza Strip. However, okay, so that would be the one thing, right? So, but I think we kind of sort of end up in the same area, even if I don't apply that Latin principle to get there. But then the second issue that you run into, I think, is Israel tries to play, I think, a dangerous game. It's become a dangerous game. It is a dangerous game. They fucked themselves a little on this, to where they try to say that these territories, or some scholars will argue, these aren't occupied territories. It doesn't make sense to call them occupied. There's no government or other entity to even occupy them from. They're just our territories. But then in that case, it seems like you are fully conceding to the apartheid argument because, well, if it's just your country, how do you have two separate systems of governance where those citizens don't all inherit the equal voting privileges and rights as people that live in Israel proper?
Right. So specifically, the apartheid claim still wouldn't apply here. Well, for one, I don't think that the claim specifically about Israel occupying Judea and Samaria and Gaza should rely upon the whether Israel's an apartheid state or not. I believe even if you believe that Israel, isn't occupying Judea and Samaria and Gaza, you can still believe that Israel is an apartheid state, which obviously isn't true.
Well, sure. Let's kick that. I don't even care about the word apartheid. Actually, fuck that. Forget I even said that. Okay, because even if they were deprived of rights, I don't think it counts as. I think for different reasons. But like,
no,
regardless
that's not
of that,
right. Yeah,
sure, yeah. But regardless of that, you do have the issue of there is territory that is like bizarrely controlled and under subjugation, where people aren't given the same like voting privileges or rights, and then they're also subjected to like different systems of governance and court systems. Plus, you kind of
because they have different citizenship. Yeah, because they have different citizenship, and it's very unfortunate. And I think this is
well, when you say different citizenship, though. So citizenship of what?
Citizenship under the PA. So this is why specifically you are seeing now this push to, end quote, annexation, which still wouldn't be an accurate term, but this push towards, expanding Israeli law specifically to the entirety of Judea and Samaria. So you can remove this this administrative framework that is occupation-like. So I can understand why people would assume, it has occupation laws from the Jordanian, from the British.
Israel would never want to extend that civil administration because I imagine they would also have to extend with it like formal citizenship to all of those Arab citizens as well, right? Which I don't think they want to absorb that many.
No,
Arab.
Not inherently, they wouldn't have to accept them. Now, I would believe it would be good for them to give a pathway towards citizenship, but legally, they wouldn't be obligated to give people living in the territory or even have those people living in the territory continue living there. But like,
How would you
the
have?
point
How
is,
would you
Israel
extend
has.
your? How would you extend your governance and your civil administration to? I'm assuming you're saying like all areas of area C and B, and then what you'd leave A to the PA or whatever.
No,
Or do you mean
no.
all of it?
I would mean all of it, considering that the PA has violated the Oslo Accords and it's simply not going anywhere. I would prefer that, but Israel has before. I can't remember which one. I had them written down, but Israel has tried to extend Israeli civil law specifically to the entirety of Judea and Samaria multiple times before, and they were stopped by the international community, and I believe a couple times by their own Supreme Court. So, like.
I would have to
No,
see
it-
how that's applied. I'm curious what that looked like. My understanding is that right now, if you're an Israeli citizen living in the West Bank, then the civil law still applies to you. But if you're a Palestinian that's not a citizen of Israel, then like you basically go through like the military courts if stuff comes up. I don't understand how they could basically, because what you're talking about almost sounds like a form of formal annexation. I don't know how that doesn't come with all the rights of a citizen as well, which we agree, right? Israel is not in a position to annex formally all of the two occupied territories, as they're called, right? They're not in a position to do that because they wouldn't be able to absorb that demographic shift.
They wouldn't be able to absorb it. No, not as people are asking for it, as in having them be citizens. No, it is just simply not feasible. But if we look at 2012, there was a Knesset bill that would expand Israeli law towards the, in quote, settlements, and it stopped a bit. Specifically, obviously, there was a couple things. The bill died because of I can't remember the report. There was a couple things, but the bill died, and there was a lot of international pressure that was put on Netanyahu at the time. In 2017, there was another attempt, and the Supreme Court ruled against it. It was settlement coalition that introduced it, and the Supreme Court ruled against it 8-1. And then there was the 2020, the Trump plan. There was some other ones. There was like 5 other ones where Israel has tried to push civil law into Judea and Samaria and Gaza, but the international community was kind of in a way and criticizing them heavily for trying to do so.
Do you think there's a way? Because it sounds like you're basically talking about them formally annexing all the territory, but without giving full citizenship to the Palestinians.
Well, it wouldn't be annexing because you can't annex your own territory. It's that same thing.
Well, like, then how do you have? Sure, but whatever Wiggins going to play then. If we're saying all of it is Israel, but then like a huge swath of people don't have citizenship, how are you selectively doling that out?
Like, how are you selectively giving them citizenship, or are you, like,
yeah, because you're going to have 4 or 5 million Palestinian Arabs that are now living in Israel without citizenship or access to citizenship.
In a scenario where Israel would, like, I guess, annex, even though I feel like annex still wouldn't be the right word. Even like if Israel were to do something like that, I don't believe it would be 5 or 7 million Arabs. I believe a huge percentage of them would leave or have a voluntary settlement in another country, and then we would go on a case-by-case scenario on people who want to live as Israelis. If you don't want to live as Israelis, if you don't want to coexist with the Jews, then you simply do not get to have citizenship.
I don't think
it's like East Jerusalem.
Sure, but I don't. Do you live in Israel or are you in America?
No, I live in America currently.
The feeling I would have is, so I'm sure you're familiar with like the Nakba and all that, 47, 48. In 67, when Israel conquered the West Bank, or Judea and Samaria, as you guys like to call it. When Israel took that over, people didn't leave because they were like, fuck this, if we leave, it's going to be like 48, we're not going to be able to come back. So they stayed in 67, and then you see in the current Gaza occupation that, like, obviously Netanyahu would be happy for these people to leave, but they don't want to leave. I think that one Arab resolution, I want to say 1357 or 1537 is still active, that says that other surrounding Arab states aren't allowed to give citizenship to Palestinian refugees. So I don't even think they're allowed to if they're part of the Arab League. So I don't see this idea where if Israel were to formally just say we're now one state that encompasses what were formerly called the occupied territories, I feel like if you were an Arab, you would stay and you would just get your citizenship, and then the Jews would literally be a minority. Now you'd have like 55% or 52% or whatever would be Arabs, and this is without even having any kind of right of return for Palestinian refugees. I don't think that they would leave.
Well, I don't know if that's inherently true because, well, I think you should read the book Rivers Without Bridges because it talks about the 48 and 67 war and they talk about the refugees that came out of it. And it's interesting because I was always taught from the very beginning that the 67 war was basically Nakba Point 2 because the amount of refugees that left, which was I can't remember the exact toll, but it was a lot of them. A lot of them left. It was a lot. I can't remember the exact amount, but it was over 100,000, a couple 100,000. And there's a book about it, and it talks about the differences in the experiences of the refugees from the 48 to 67 war.
Yeah, my understanding, and I could be wrong, it's been a long time since I read any of this shit, but I say a long time, I guess it's been a year or two. My understanding was that in 67, in 48, a lot of people fled because they were like super gassed up by surrounding Arabs saying that like the Jews are literally going to fucking kill all of you. That probably wasn't true. So in 48, a lot of them legitimately fled because they were worried about that happening. In trying to come back afterwards, a lot of them couldn't come back. They were like, depending on how far you go, like I think even Benny Morris says that there are like fucking Israeli snipers that would just shoot and kill Arabs trying to walk back to their villages and shit if they thought they could join after. So that in 67, when the West Bank was conquered, all of the Arabs basically just stayed put. There was no second Nakba. Maybe some weird pro-Palestinians try to argue that, but they're like, well, fuck it, we're not going to leave. We're going to stay here.
No, so actually, it's kind of the opposite. So they were scared specifically of the violence because the capture of Jerusalem was, pretty fucking bad. If we just look at East Jerusalem, it was very vicious. So the reason that a huge percentage of them left is specifically because of the violence and the stories they heard of the violence of the recapture of Jerusalem.
Wait, a lot of people did flee in 67 for Arabs? Maybe they did have to go look. But like my understanding is that like for like Sheikh Jarrah, one of the reasons why that neighborhood is fought over so much is because there were Jews that were expelled from there in 48 when Jordan took it over. And then when they came back and conquered it in 67, like a lot of the Arabs that lived there were like, fuck you, I don't want to leave. And then some of the Jews were like, well, we lived here before. And then there was like that back and forth. But I guess I would have to look at 67, how many like Arabs actually ended up fleeing. But like regardless, like I don't know how I don't think Israel would ever absorb all these people. I don't think most of them would leave. I don't think any huge percentage would leave at all. I think they were going to leave. I think they would have already fucking fled. And then there's no way that Israel absorbs this many people knowing that they would have a demographic minority afterwards. I just don't think that ever happens.
But I don't necessarily think that Israel would have to, I can't remember I believe it's either Sahara or Ukraine, whether there are people living there in huge percentages without citizenship, not because, Ukraine put them there because of, Morocco put them there, but simply because they had went there. They tried to settle in a place that wasn't theirs, so they never got citizenship. So I think it would be kind of something similar. I can't remember the country. My brain's fried right now. But I don't necessarily think that Israel would. I understand that it would come to a lot of criticism, but I think it's a lot better than having a governing body there that is supporting and incentivizing terrorism against the Jewish states. I think that's 10 times better to have them without a government because quite frankly, I think Mahmoud Abbas is not doing a good job. I think he's doing, I guess, the best he can, specifically with the demographics he has and the people who just simply don't fuck with him in Judea and Samaria. But I really think it's kind of going to crumble. And if Israel doesn't get ahead of it, then we're going to continue seeing things like terrorist attacks, which we just saw in Jerusalem.
Yeah, so you can say this, but I think there are no arguments. Well, this doesn't sound like a rock and a hard place. This sounds just like a total capitulation to Israel. This sounds like the ideal one-state solution for Israel that would never be accepted by the people in Israel, nor the international community. I don't even know if the domestic Israeli population would accept it, because now you're talking about basically a one-state solution where you've like finagled a way to make it so the 5 million Arabs that you absorb don't have voting rights. I don't see any world where that ever happens. Like, I don't think anybody accepts that.
Like, here's the thing. I don't think there is getting any better in the international community, specifically for Israel. So I feel like it's either go home, go big or go home, considering we have, like, Trump in office right now. I don't believe we're getting an administration that is going to be more pro-Israel, where Israel could do something as drastic as this, that the international community wouldn't agree upon. I mean, I think that's the only way to, get to some sort of peace.
Sure, but I mean, right now the international community just does a bunch of finger waving at Israel. If Israel were to literally delete Palestine as a country, which I mean has been recognized as an observer state at least, if not more, in the UN, you're talking about basically Israel making a declaration legally to delete that as a country. I don't know if the surrounding Arab states are okay with that. I don't know if that forces more action from the international community. I don't know if the domestic population in Israel would even support that. Like that's It's like the most radical solution, basically, that is pro-Zionist with no concessions made whatsoever.
No, there wouldn't be any actual anything done because the UN doesn't have that power. Specifically, and America has veto power, so America could just veto.
Well, I'm not saying that they would
UN
like. I'm not saying that they would like invade. I'm not like a Security Council resolution to invade. I'm just saying that it would be an incredibly hostile environment. I don't know if that would look like trade sanctions or countries like starting to cut off Israel in that way. And then I don't know if the surrounding Arab states would start to turn hostile, or if that would damage their relationship with surrounding Arab states to literally delete Palestine as a country, and to just have the people all there as like second-class citizens would be not. That's like the fantasy Israeli solution that gets them everything they want while giving nothing to the Palestinian side. I think I just don't think that's a realistic path forward.
Yeah, I get your point. But I think I eventually think it's going to happen anyways, or it has to happen at some point. Oh my God, sorry, my cat came in. I think it has to happen at some point. Obviously, yes, with the negotiations that Israel is currently in with many Arab states, Qatar, such and such. Yeah, they probably aren't going to be happy, or they're going to have to do like a finger wave against Israel, for their, peoples. But I don't really think they're going to like. I don't really think it's going to be that bad. I don't think it's going to be that bad. I would really have to see, with recently Jelani coming to America and other stuff, what like the Arab leaders have to say about it, and like the new settlements that have been approved in Judea and Samaria and the takeover of Gaza. I would have to refresh my mind over that and what they are saying about that, because if they're not really caring about that, I don't really think they're going to care about the destruction of the PA, which I don't think they really care much about. I think their people care about it, but they as leaders, I don't think they really care.
I guess, are like Palestinians that live in the West Bank going to be allowed to or people in Gaza going to be allowed to move to like Tel Aviv and stuff? Or are they going to be like stuck there? Are they giving Israeli passports so they can travel out of the country? Or
I think it will be similar to East Jerusalem. They will be able to travel freely eventually, but I think at some point obviously there's going to be the checkpoints that are already there, maybe reinforced more.
So East Jerusalem is like 2 to 4 hours to get to Jerusalem proper every single day in line, and no passports given, and not the ability to leave the country, and contingent on current security conditions. And it's not, the freedom movement is pretty shit if you're in the West Bank, I think. And even from East Jerusalem to the Jerusalem proper is pretty shit, I think.
Yeah, like it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be this amazing process, but I really think that is the only way to stop the T-ism that is going to be forever going on. I think it is something that is long coming, and it simply there really is no other option when we look at the PA not wanting to negotiate anything, because they literally can't negotiate anything. You were talking about this last night. The PLO, the PA, they cannot negotiate anything because any type of secession of anything would be basically the violation to some group inside of their territories. It would be a fucking riot. So they can't negotiate anything. That's why the Oslo Accords were so vague.
They also can't negotiate anything. I think the Oslo Accords were vague because Arafat was a loser. I think they can't negotiate anything because right now they can't even speak on behalf of all the Palestinian people, right? Since 2005 or 7 or whatever, they've had no say over what's going on in the Gaza Strip or any of those people. And then Netanyahu is keen to not allow the PA into the Gaza Strip as well. So that situation is going to continue indefinitely. I understand what you're saying, but this is literally like the Zaya wet dream, like dream of a dream of like, we found a way to have a one state solution while also depriving all of the Palestinians in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip of the ability to vote. And now everything is going to be perfect. Like, that just sounds like a recipe for disaster. Like, there's no way that the Palestinian Arabs accept that. Yeah.
I don't necessarily think it would be depriving them from the right to vote. I believe they will eventually have the right to vote. I believe they would have equal access to the right to vote. It would go on an individual basis. But it's not like, oh, you are in a territory that you moved to.
Wait, I don't know what you mean by it would go. I don't know what those words mean. They would eventually have access to the right to vote on an individual basis. There's no world where Israel accepts the 5 million Palestinian citizens.
No, and 5 million citizens wouldn't apply for citizenship. It would be similar to East Jerusalem. They don't want Israeli citizenship. Now, they can live there, they can be residents there, but until they denounce terrorism and until they
but they don't want the people in East Jerusalem don't want citizenship because they're still waiting for a Palestinian state. If Israel just made it one state, then at that point they all basically have to apply. But also they would all probably want citizenship if they knew they would be the demographic majority there. I think they'd be happy for that.
Well, no, because actually, funny enough, in East Jerusalem, the thing that they do to, I guess, get at Israel, the boycott they do is the boycott of voting. So I don't necessarily think that they will actually have the intellectual, like, boom to think, oh, well, maybe if we actually apply to votes, even if we, trick the Israeli states and then vote and get who we want in, then it's going to change anything. No, it's not going to change anything because they're not going to vote in the first place. They don't want citizenship. And I believe the main reason that the people in East Jerusalem do not want citizenship is because of obviously this vendetta against Israel. I don't know if it, like, obviously some of them are I guess waiting for Palestinian states, but it's just like it's communal things. Like, it's more about the community, the family. Oh, you're pledging allegiance. You're joining the Zionists. Like, it's more about that. It's less about, oh, there's going to be a Palestinian state for me to join, so I'm not going to join the Israeli state. I don't think that really is much of the argument.
I super disagree with that. I think that they don't want to join because I think that they're still ass-pained about the annexation of East Jerusalem, and now obviously the moving the embassy to Jerusalem a few years ago. I think that people still see East Jerusalem as a point of contention to be negotiated at in future negotiations for an eventual Palestinian state. I think if Israel formally annexed all of it, or not annexed it, but claimed it or whatever, or instantiated it as their
expanded civil
state,
yeah.
Then I understand what you're saying, but this is just like, I think this is purely fantastical that 5 million plus Palestinians would be happy. Keep in mind, there's already 2 million Arab Palestinians in Israel that have citizenship, and the 5 million of them that would be annexed would just be happy to not have it and not vote because they can't think to vote. Like, Palestinians are, love them or hate them as a result of UNRWA and everything else, like some of the most educated Arabs, I think, across the Arab world. Like, I don't know. I think that is totally untenable. There's no way, but
okay. I get your point, but I get your point, but the main thing that I want to be very clear is that you cannot occupy your own territory. And understand you have disagreements with it, but I think your disagreements should really rely upon it being legally valid, not, oh, well, then if it is an occupation, then there is an apartheid. I don't think it should rely upon that, because if you believe Israel is an apartheid, then you can believe that and also believe that Israel is not occupying Gaza or Judea and Samaria.
Legally their own territory. That just stands at ends with how the region, with how even Israel has treated itself. Like, why the Oslo Accords at all? Why would you ever designate another governing entity at all? Well, yeah, but clearly this is the idea was an eventual transition to some kind of Palestinian state. So
it was for specifically a final solution, and we never got to a final solution because of the vague language. So it's like,
yeah, I'm aware of that. But the idea was that there was going to be some Palestinian state, and that was clearly in the minds of all of the Palestinians and Israelis that were supporting this framework.
I don't know if that's entirely true. I believe some did have a vision of a Palestinian state, but that wasn't necessarily there was supposed to be just simply, it was very vague, a permanent status, a
sure,
final
solution. It was vague. I agree with that. But no, there's no way that anybody would have agreed that they were moving towards some one state solution where the majority of Palestinians had no voting rights. That's just never.
Right, I would agree with that, but it was, I wouldn't necessarily say that the Oslo Accords was specifically for a two-state solution. I believe, yes, that was one of these solutions that it could have went to, but we never got there, and it was so vague that we don't know simply. Yes, the, in quote, Palestinian leaders did have that vision in mind. Many of them did, but that wasn't like the point of the Oslo Accords. I would just say that.
Then why create a whole separate region with a whole separate government? Isn't that the definition almost of another state? Is another territory with its own government?
Not according to the Montevideo Convention. No, that's the equivalent of having a state in the United States or having a province in Russia. No,
we can. There's no way that you can hide behind the legal definitions and terms when everybody at the time understood that they were not they weren't just delineating a province in Israel or a sub-state or a semi-autonomous zone. The Palestinian Authority and Area A, these were things that everybody understood at the time was likely heading towards some kind of independent state. That's what all the negotiations were for all of the later stuff right at Camp David and everything else. Nobody was like, oh, how are we going to be the best state of Israel? The negotiation was for the creation of the eventual country.
I get your point, but again, I would have to disagree because it's not explicit, and that's not what, and Israel specifically kept it vague about that. It was supposed to be up for final negotiation. So yeah, I get your point that, yeah, it was implied. There was a lot of people who believed that, but it set up the temporary government to eventually get to the question about a Palestinian state, the return of the people, and da-da-da. But I it was more about peace. It was more about accepting
What percentage
Israel's.
would you think of the Palestinian people, or like in their mind, what percentage was it that the Oslo Accords were a path towards an eventual state for the Palestinians, like a country, an independent country for the Palestinians?
I believe it was a good percentage, but I don't think that really takes away from the points of the Oslo Accords. If they believe something that's incorrect, then they believe it to be incorrect. That's not what the negotiations were for. The negotiations were for the creation of the PA, which eventually happened, and the maintaining or the creation of peace.
Yeah, but also the territorial segregation and the eventual handing over of territory to the exclusive governance of the Palestinian Authority.
Eventually, yes.
Well, no, that did happen,
Possibly,
right? Like
possibly.
Area A, you're not allowed to live there if the Palestinian Authority doesn't want you. Like a Jew from Israel can't go move to, Jenin or Nablus or whatever if it's
Right.
like an Area A city, right? That doesn't sound like a state in your country that you would be disallowed from moving to. So I mean, like that. I mean, I feel like that was obviously the end goal was to have some kind of like separate created country.
I still have to disagree with that. Yes, that was a possible solution, but that wasn't mandated. That was implied.
I understand that it wasn't mandated. You keep saying it wasn't mandated, of course, because they didn't have that. They didn't have the political will on, at the very least, at Arafat's side.
But it
maybe
wasn't
not
said at all in
Israel's.
the Oslo Accords about.
No, it wasn't because
but it
it was
wasn't
a framework moving them in a direction to that. But that was clearly the ideal. It was what people were striving for, right? Because that's what they tried to finalize at Camp David, was figuring out like, okay, well, what is a Palestinian state going to look like? But they couldn't figure that out, and then as a result, right, the Second Intifada breaks out now.
So I really feel like it's a rewashing of history. Yes, there were a lot of people who believe that, but I don't necessarily believe that that was the goal necessarily of the Oslo Accords. Specifically, yes, that was a possible solution, but people are trying. I feel like it's trying to rewash it because of like obviously the modern push for a Palestinian state. Okay, I understand that, but that wasn't always their their key. In every single negotiation, that wasn't always their key determining factor for whether they wanted to or wanted to not go into a negotiation. It was specifically for peace.
Okay.
And that
I
wasn't always
disagree,
the
but I mean, I understand what you're saying,
Okay.
but I don't disagree with it. Okay. All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Any final thoughts?
Okay. I can send you the case law if you want me to. I can send you a couple books also about specifically the land and who owned it under the British Mandate. It's written by a non-Zionist and it goes in depth. And it's not the 6% that people say that Jews owned. I can send you that book if you would like me to. And yeah, that's it.
Okay. Thanks a lot. I appreciate the convo. Be careful.
Deuces.
Damn. Okay. I heard Jimmy Kimmel's back. We did it, guys. Good job.
Two years. Organization.
Is this guy solving autism? Is this a boss?
Other
Hi. Quick. I got 50 million things to cover. What's up?
The Pragmatic Pavis had a ton of really interesting articles last week that came out on something about a guy called Charlie Kirk, for example.
Well, I heard about that guy. Yeah.
Yeah, and some crazy things happening, right? And apparently a genocide that might be or might not be happening. So there's some details on that. And there's also about a guy, this was one of the most interesting ones, who, he turned to extremism, believed in 9/11 conspiracies, and it kind of gives you an idea about how these people go a little crazy on the right. So that's also quite topical. One of my pieces was on migration to the UK and how the far right, like Nigel Farage, is dressing this up as this big crazy invasion of the country, but statistically, it's just not what he's describing. So there was a lot this week, and I hope people are aware that it's been out.
Okay. I'll link it in chat.
Sorry, I missed the beginning of the stream, so I don't know if you've covered this, but what did you think about this fiesta of Charlie Kirk's life?
I'm pretty cringe.
And,
Basically just like a political Nazi rally centered around the death of somebody they're trying to turn into like a super political martyr.
Yeah, exactly. They're trying to make him into a kind of a demigod, effectively, right? Because they need someone to replace Trump, because eventually Trump will die and pass away, but it's about creating a kind of mythos, right? And I think they're
Well, I think it's
kind
just
of aware
about
of what they're
driving
doing.
up political support right now and solidifying like the enemies and their own team and all of that, and driving hatred towards the other side to kind of keep their people together.
Yeah, I find it kind of crazy that Trump would even like use the word hate when they're all claiming the dangers of hate speech, because you can literally describe what Trump said as hate speech, but because he's not even dressing it up as anything else. So I find it kind of wild that they would be so kind of blatant in that regard. And then, yeah, for like some guy's funeral, it just is. It's actually kind of insulting to Kirk if you care to respect.
I mean, not
anything
really,
about the
actually.
man.
I think that Kirk would actually absolutely want his death to be fucking used. I mean, he was a fucking Trump Comstock his life anyway, so I mean, like, I think that he'd actually be fully on board with it.
Yeah, but like if you were going to say, I mean, then you can't argue that he is a legitimate character, right?
I don't think he was a
people on the
legitimate
right
character. I think he was literally just a fucking
I
Trump
agree,
mouthpiece.
but I'm saying people on the right will want to say, oh, look, this guy was really genuine. It's about genuine debate and such like. And he really cared about his, the people he was debating against. And it's like, well, if that's the case, it would want to be something a little bit more humble than, a bunch of, fireworks and Trump telling the audience how much he hates the opposition. So, like, if they really want to have an image of Kirk as someone humble and decent and this true caring Christian, then it doesn't really represent that. But the fact is, like you say, I mean, it was just a veneer.
Yeah.
And the guy was acting in bad faith, I think. But so it just is very dissonant. They go on about hate speech one day, and the next day, their holy leader is saying how much he hates the opposition. It's just riddled with contradiction, it seems. But
No, I don't think so. I think that it appears contradictory, or it appears like incomprehensible if you're trying to like evaluate it on the words or whatever. Like imagine if like we're talking about like what's the best car, and I show you like in your mind the best car is the one that like races the fastest or can clear like a track time, and I wheel out like 20 cars, and at the end of the day we super disagree on which cars are the best, and then you notice that every single car that I picked was blue, right? Well, in my mind the best car is just the one that's blue. I don't care the track performance. You're trying to evaluate their speech in terms of like what like logically reasonably makes sense, but that's not how MAGA has talked for years. It's just whatever they can do to cast the off team as the enemy and bad and evil, and then that's it. So insofar as that, their message is wholly consistent and completely lacks contradiction, because they can just morph and bend the facts to fit whatever case they want. So when they call one thing hate speech and another thing not hate speech, what they're really saying is like, we don't like these guys and we do like these guys. It's important to investigate every single person that we can for this weird Russia thing from 2016. But the investigations into our people, like Homan, we killed that because that's the weaponization of the DOJ. It's only logical if you try to read it like real English language. But if you just look at it as like team sports and they're just like attacking everybody that they don't like, then it makes sense. That's a depressing way to look at it. But I mean, genuinely, I think that's just how you have to analyze their the way that they function. Yeah.
So it's not actually even about language in terms of written or spoken language. It's just about an optics and emotion and feel, like in a sport, like just feeling hatred towards the opposition. Anything that encourages that or promotes that on an us and them and a polarization is what the base basically wants of the MAGA base.
Yeah, I mean,
there must be
it's
some
the go-to comparison, but like the 1984 stuff I think works perfectly, where the enemy changes like mid-sentence.
Yeah, then but on the other hand, I mean, there has been a pushback from some people, right, in the MAGA about freedom of speech, and suggesting that this isn't quite to the degree that they wanted it.
Yeah, but I mean, like you say, there is some pushback, but like it's the equivalent of like a man, like fucking you in the ass when you've never wanted it, and you're like, I don't really know how I feel about this, and then you just like let it happen. You're like, oh, like so. Yeah, there's been some pushback, but like nobody's going to change the way they vote. Nobody's going to call for like some congressional inquiry. Nobody's going to call for an investigation. Nobody's threatening to uphold legislation because of this, right? And anybody that does, like Massey or Rand Paul, are branded enemies of the party just as much as a Democrat. So.
Yeah, because they don't draw red lines. It's like, okay, well, we're going to have to be a bit more flexible to include this, this thing that we don't actually agree with. It's completely contradictory from their point before, but and it comes about feelings and this sense of, this kind of, I'm not going to quote patriotism because it's not about the US. In fact, it's very destructive. Sure. And at the moment in Europe, I mean, from where I live, it's about 500 kilometers away. I know a drone landed in Poland. So, even in Germany, what's happening in Poland now is very, very close to home. And so the lack of US support, and then Trump's pulled support from Estonia, I believe, in the Baltic states, bordering, I was about to say the Soviet Union, bordering Russia. And so that lack of support of your allies is very destructive for us, of course. And so, I mean, even from a selfish perspective as a European, this destructiveness in the US is also concerning for us.
Yeah, I think testing Article 5 or whatever right now, I think would be really, really, really scary. I don't think anybody would want to do that in NATO or should want to do that because there's a real chance that the US just completely walks away under Trump from that coalition.
It just shows the emperor has no clothes on. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of evident. And I mean, to be fair, also European nations aren't taking it seriously enough. I don't know if you heard there was drones that came over Romania and they just ushered them back into Ukraine. So they didn't bother shooting them down and they just let them land in the Ukraine. So
Sure.
I mean, that's really considerate. So we as European nations need to do a lot better anyway. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting times to say the least. But I mean, one of the reasons I wrote the article on the migration issue in the UK, you had brought it up on stream that your perspective was that there was a genuine massive migration crisis in Europe, and it wasn't quite comparable with the US. And I haven't looked at the figures for the US, but I actually think there's a lot of parallels because there has been a genuine migration crisis. I'd say mainly crisis for the migrants, but it hasn't been quite the numbers that our far rights are making out, because they talk about invasion and breaking point and all this kind of thing. But I mean, they've been doing it for 10 years, and statistically, it's just not there. So I don't know.
In
I mean, that's
Europe
the
or
impression
in America?
in both, right? I mean, you've had
Well,
a
the
lot of.
difference is I feel like in Europe, the two big differences is that one, we can always employ anybody that comes here. Like if people come here, we'll put them to work. But in Europe, there's more barriers to employment. There's a greater welfare state that exists, so people can take more money from the state if they come. And then there was like larger numbers of people that were showing up compared to the percentage of the population. So like Germany, Sweden, I think are the two ones that I hear it cited the most. I don't know actually for the UK how many actually made it over there, but they were legitimately like huge swaths of people that were absorbed that weren't allowed to or couldn't work for a year at least. And then we're also
the
taking these
problems
now,
at first for sure, but it's been. I mean, the thing is, already the studies on the economics are there for Germany, for example. I mean, it was one of the countries that took in the most. It's been economically positive now. So of course, the investment with welfare means the investment in German lessons.
It's been economically
so
beneficial, all of the migration from 2013 onwards.
From 2015. Yeah,
2015.
There was a study on specifically the 2015 wave, because that was the big wave that, from Syria and Afghanistan.
You should send it to me and I can check too.
I mean, I could also, maybe I'll write up in more detail on this. I did write an article because it's been 10 years, right? So I wrote an article addressing some of these points. So there were some sources I cited there of interest to this. But then there's the cultural thing's a more complicated thing, and I think there is some justification to say that integration could be better, and we've got to uphold those standards in terms of those liberal standards, and people's ability to have freedom of speech and freedom to be who they'd like to be in our societies. And there is a bit of Islamic conservatism among refugees. And I'm actually friends with a lot of them, either through university or through my gym. So in fact, I even thought about doing a podcast about it and interviewing a lot of these people, because they've got such a diverse range of backgrorounds, rather than just being these statistics and, seeing these fringe cases that kill people in markets and such like, which is really quite a rare event. But it does seem to draw parallels with the US. I mean, they've been integrated into the workforce. It's been great. I mean, we've got such a low birth rate in Germany. It's been a boon for the economy, actually, to have these mostly young male working age migrants. So I think there is actually more parallels than perhaps you made out before, but I need to look at the US side of things to really be entirely conclusive on that. But yeah, I mean, it's in some respect, if you don't mind me saying, it's kind of like this image that the far right in Europe has made out, that starts to permeate into even reasonable thinking. And as I say, it's not that there's no truth to it. But for example, to quote a statistic from my article this week on the UK migration situation, I mean, you've heard about these small boat crossings, right, to the UK, and this from Nigel Farage. It's one of his.
I haven't.
It's the only thing he talks about. Okay, but there's been a lot of boats. It's massively exploded, partly because of Brexit. So the Brexit meant that the UK isn't part of the Dublin Agreement anymore, which meant that it's not so easy to deal with migration and asylum seeking in Europe. So it made it a lot harder for Britain to send asylum seekers back to France. And so then more and more boats started crossing over the channel. And it has increased massively in the past 10 years. But it's a very, very, very small number, increasing to being a very small number. And it's never been more than 5% of migration to the UK. And it's started to come down in the past couple of years. But they're using the language of invasion, of these completely dehumanizing these people. And if you're going to risk your life to cross these waters, there must be, it's not like you're going on holiday. And so even the dehumanization, I think I find that even worse than if people were saying, hey, I don't want you here, I'm sorry about it. It's the dehumanizing language I find really quite concerning, because these people are, they've got a diverse range of backgrounds, right? And they're just trying to make a better life. And we're lucky to be born with the passports that we have. So,
Sure. Okay.
and I think it's a very identical thing with the US in that regards, right? It's this dehumanization of these migrants that have crossed the border, and this notion that of just sending people back to South America.
Gotcha.
I don't know. Well, how do you feel about that? I mean, is that your?
I mean, I think dehumanization is bad, but I don't know enough about the economic state of Europe to say whether or not they can absorb as many people as they can. Just because a journey is tragic doesn't necessarily mean a nation should be like obligated to take on like a whole group of other people. But I don't know enough about the factual stuff recently for European immigration to have a strong opinion on it.
No, fair enough. As I say, it's less than 5%, and so it has been insignificant in that regards, in terms of initial costs for the social welfare costs, and they're not even entitled to welfare. They get very basic care when they initially come to the UK.
Sure.
So it's and as I say, I mean, I don't know about the US side of things, whether it's been really a breaking point on the border with Mexico and how serious it has been. Has it been massively overplayed by MAGA?
Yeah, we don't. The problems in America are entirely fictitious. They're non-existent. But I think it's just a totally different type of immigrant that comes to the U.S. and I think they come for totally different reasons. The incentives, I think, are different, is the feeling that I have. Like nobody is coming to the United States with the hopes of taking advantage of our welfare state. That doesn't exist. That might be more of a thing maybe in for places like Germany or for Sweden or Finland. I'm not sure. But I think the incentive structure is different. I think that our capacity to employ people is different. Like we're a super hungry economy. We have so much foreign investment. We can handle like so many more people that we can like put so many people to work. I don't know if that's necessarily the same across. We've
got an acute worker shortage in Germany for sure. They have one of the craziest lowest birth rates in I don't know about in the world. I mean, it's not comparable with South Korea, for example, I think, but it's still for Europe. It's one of the lowest, and they've been desperate for workers here. And then countries, I mean, Germany's got a pretty decent social welfare system, but the UK is not really a fantastic social welfare system. So
sure.
I don't think.
Is unemployment different in Germany? Because I'm looking at it right now, and it seems like the unemployment in Germany is 6.3%, which seems a little high to me.
Yeah, it's come up. It has come up. I mean, the economy stagnated a little bit in recent years for obvious reasons, mainly energy. So unemployment has increased since the outbreak of the Ukraine war.
Gotcha.
So of course now it's not necessarily now it becomes more of an issue, and that's often the case with migration. That it can be a good thing to increase your population size, but later on when you do have an economic downturn, then people start pointing fingers and such like. But overall, still, it's been economically very, very good for Germany. But I also don't really think it was really about the welfare system. I mean, a lot of people were fleeing simply for their lives, and they were just trying to find a country to settle in.
Sure.
So, I mean, and going to the UK is an interesting one. I actually tried to get someone not to go on one of these boats. He was already in Germany, and he wasn't allowed to bring his wife and child to Germany because they're getting really, really strict in Germany. They've actually sent people back to Afghanistan and such like. And so he was thinking, hey, maybe if I go to the UK, they're going to be easier on me, and I can get my wife and my 2 daughters out of Afghanistan. And I'm looking this guy in the eye, and talking to him about his daughters in Afghanistan, just thinking what horrific life they're going to end up having. So I really want his daughters to have a decent life, but I said to him, you don't take those boats. They're so dangerous. So many people have drowned in the channel.
Sure.
And so his thought was just about being reunited with his wife and his children. So I think that's mainly they're looking for places to get jobs, and they're looking for places to be reunited with their family. And I got the impression that in the US there was a lot of similarities in that regard.
Yeah, for the jobs, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. So and of course it always looks better these our nations than war-torn or economically impoverished countries. So
Yeah.
I think it's difficult, and we need to help these countries so that people don't feel the need to migrate in the first place. But at the same time, like the dehumanizing discussion, it's unhealthy as a society to be talking that way. And then they blow up their statistics and make them crazy, which they're simply not. At least in the European context. And but you're saying it's fictitious in the US, so I guess, as I say, I still think there's a lot of parallels.
Yeah. Maybe. Yeah. Like I said, I have to read more in the European stuff. But, okay.
Okay. Cool. So check out pragmatic papers from last week, and this week we should also have something on probably the recognizing of Palestine as a state. I mean, your last caller had some quite interesting points to make about that, but I don't know. I'm more of the opinion that it's just incredibly difficult, and no one's going to be happy about it. But
For sure.
there's also internal politics, like in the UK context, that recognizing Palestine is also to placate a little bit people on the left, because I don't know if you realize the Labour government right now is crashing and burning.
I feel like it has been for like the past decade since Brexit, but yeah.
Well, I mean, they had the Tories, and Labour got in last year, and everyone was really hopeful at this change of government. But Starmer's also tried to get rid of the furthest left of the Labour Party, which superficially looks quite good. But the problem is, it's created a huge amount of turmoil in the party, and then the economy is just so bad. So the government can't really borrow very easily. They should have increased taxes, but they were elected on the promise of not increasing taxes, and so then they're cutting investment, and they're not really doing much different from what the Tories have done. In the meantime, we've had two new parties on the left form. One is Jeremy Corbyn's. One looks like it's already it's dead on arrival. But the Green Party's got a pretty charismatic leader, and I mean it's the kind of honeymoon period, but he's getting a lot of support, and polling is looking really quite concerning for the Labour Party. So I guess they realise they need to kind of give some breadcrumbs to people who are likely to vote for this new guy. So that's one of the reasons I think as well that Starmer's gone and recognised Palestine as an actual state. But,
Okay. I have no comment. I have no idea about British politics, so I'll take your word for it. Okay.
Okay. Well, yeah.
All right.
I mean, it's.
I love you. I gotta cover this autism shit. I got like 400 fucking things open. So, but thank you for the.
Okay. Yeah, we need to have autism cured. It's an emergency, right?
True.
So.
It is. Dramatic emergency. Okay. I love you. Be careful.
Yeah. Take care. Bye.
Jesus.
Why can you not stop lying? Please stop lying! What is wrong with you?
Oh, he's the guy, the speedrunner Australian dude who's fucking cringe and weird, right? Hold on, wait. Let me grab a Red Bull real quick. 1 sec. Where the fuck is my autism cure? Any nerds out there want to walk me through how to do a live stream in female form? Wait, this is a meme, right? It's not actually a thing? Because there's... Or does the AI even have a foundation mismatch? No, it's real. I feel like you guys are just saying it's real. Or are you saying the guy is AI? Yeah, I have no idea. I think you guys are saying it's real because you think it's real. But okay. I don't know. Maybe not. Somebody source me. Oh, shit, you're right. Wait. Oh, fuck me. I'm so retarded. You're right. It's not real. It's a meme. The monitors are different. Yeah, true. I'm a god. I am a god. I can tell. Fuck you. Which one is the fake one? No, they're not fake. It's just a guy sat down and recorded something and a girl sat down and recorded something. Oh, and she has headphones on too. Yeah, this is... Fuck you. The RGB schemes and everything are different on the computer as well. Yeah. Okay, stop. Jimmy Kimmel's late night show will return to ABC's airwaves on Tuesday, the Walt Disney Company says. Nice. Argentina is a systematically important U.S. ally in Latin America, and the U.S. Treasury stands ready to do what is needed within its mandate to support Argentina. All options for stabilization are on the table. What? These options may include, but are not limited to, swap lines, direct currency purchases, and purchases of U.S. dollar-denominated government debt. We're so fucked with our debt that we're not only taking on U.S. debt that we promised we wouldn't do anymore, we're also taking on other countries' debt? Wait, why? What? What is the... Is Trump like obsessed with the Malay guy or whatever? Does he like him or? It's AI, it was just edited together.
Eu postei esse vídeo e muita gente me perguntou como eu fiz e qual ferramenta usei. Então hoje eu vou mostrar o passo a passo bem rapidinho. E o melhor, é grátis. Mas antes não esqueçam de seguir o meu perfil, beleza? Grave em câmera fixa, nada de mexer na câmera para evitar bugs. Tira um print do vídeo, entra no Google Gemini, envia o print e pede para que ele substitua a pessoa por outra pessoa. Exemplo, substitua essa pessoa por uma mulher morena vestida com uma roupa de academia. Agora, e suba a foto. E suba. Arraste pro meio para algum passo a passo, bem na minha...
Sure, never mind. I can believe this. I can believe that maybe, but that's different than you. Like when you do it like this, you're making it seem like it's doing this conversion live, which I don't know if it can look necessarily that good live yet. So this is more believable if that's how it was generated. Sure. This one is
A
live.
reference video for Juan Animate. Okay, this is Justine testing out a reference video for Juan Animate. So I will wave,
Sure. I can believe
turn my head.
this is live. This video here on the right looks significantly worse than the video on the left, though, right?
And I'll be shocked. Okay, this
Like,
is
I don't
just-
think this is as good as the one we just saw that was generated. Kevin Newsom. Thank you to everyone but Brendan Carr, FCC. Bayzed. Fuck that guy. Okay. 7-day-old video. We already watched this for the AirPod Pros. Fuck, I still haven't picked them up. They're downstairs in the mailbox. Breaking. SCOTUS 6-3 lets Trump sideline Biden appointee Rebecca Slaughter from Federal Trade Commission. SCOTUS will also hear arguments in December on overruling Humphrey's executor case out of congressional limits. Wouldn't Trump always be able to sideline or fire whoever he wants from the FTC? Is there a reason why he wouldn't be able to? Bro, chill. We've watched this before on stream. I don't know why you were spamming the fuck out of this clip. I hope you're getting paid for advertising. Oh my god, calm the fuck down. Why did 3 judges rule against it, though? I don't know. It's our liberals. AK likes. Destiny gets caught using AI during Myron Gaines debate. Shocking. I don't know why he said this. What do you mean got caught? I don't use AI in debates. I don't even know what the fuck I would ask it. What? For which part? Wait. Just real quick. I'm just going to ask for one thing. I don't do this during the debates, but I'm just curious.
Sure.
Okay. And if you don't have it on hand, that's fine. But like, what is our source here for like Jews stealing the land? Like, if we had to think of like one, because I mean, the Peel Commission itself doesn't refer to this. I don't think any of the prior white papers, because I think there were 5 or 6 prior to this. I'm literally just reading text from the Peel Commission here.
You're like, oh, you're Googling, you're using AI right now? I'm debating you and AI?
Okay. wait. Just. This is cut to make it look like he caught me. Anytime, I think you've seen me do this multiple times in debates. When I stop and think like this, what I'm thinking of is how nuclear do I want to go right now on a person who clearly does not have anywhere near as strong a command of the facts as I do on this. That's the consideration. Like, you just accuse me of using AI on a thing that I'm literally referencing my own fucking notes on, okay? Number one. Number two, you're descriptively wrong on multiple points that I've been nice enough not to demand a source on. I think this is the first thing that I pushed for a source on. And then 3, when pushed for a source, you can't source any of the claims you're making on anything. But, okay. Nice that it was cut right after that. Don't I say... Okay. wait. Don't I say right after? I'm pretty sure at this point, I think I'm just reading through the Appeal Commission text, but okay. Post a longer clip in response. I don't even know what part this was clipped out of. The fact that he thinks you're an AI is such a compliment. I don't even know what I was saying. That was AI. What did I even say before this? Wait. Just real quick. I'm just going to ask for one thing. I don't do this during the debates, but I'm just curious.
Sure.
Okay. And if you don't have it on hand, that's fine. But like, what is our source here for like Jews stealing the land? Like, if we had to think, like, I don't need AI to ask that question. It doesn't even make sense. Jews bought land, sometimes sneakily, when the Ottoman Empire had restrictions against Jews buying land. What would I need to ask an AI? Why would I ask an AI to ask a question? This is like for a source on a thing. It doesn't make any sense. What? Okay. Myron used ChatGPT 100% to make his whole case, and he was insecure about it, which is why... What do you mean ChatGPT? Doesn't he have a notebook in front of him?
Debating UN AI?
Okay. No hands up right now. I'm not using AI. The only thing I have on my screen right now is the text of the Peel Commission Purdue to make sure that I'm not missing anything in there. Okay? Sure. You keep referring to Jews buying stuff and stealing it and kicking Arabs off. That's not true. If you wanted to make the argument that there was some illegitimate purchase of land, the only thing I could possibly think of was that in the Ottoman Empire, but this also contradicts the other claim of the Arabs allowed the Jews to live next to them. That's not true. In the Ottoman Empire, they didn't, because the Ottoman Empire actually explicitly forbade the purchase of land by Jews in the Ottoman Empire. So if you want to make the argument
in the later years, they did.
Illegitimate land purchases, sometimes Jewish foreign companies would have to create shell companies to buy this land from absent Arab land owners and then do it that way because the Ottoman Empire wouldn't actually allow Jews to purchase land.
I don't know how exactly, but I know they did this somehow.
Collapse of the Ottoman Empire in 1917. That's why I know that claim can't possibly be true. Absolutely didn't welcome them then. Number one. Number two, there was back and forth that the Ottoman Empire didn't allow the purchase of... I'm just curious with this, because they had no military...
He never gives a source for this because it's not true. This claim is not true. I don't know how he can accuse me of using AI when I'm just asking for a source on a claim. Cover the news. What? Bro, fuck the news. I don't care. What's happening today? Charlie memes... Stratford shutdown.
Well, President Trump's approval rating.
Mom tells off daughter for saying she's a boy. Five killed in Israeli strike on Lebanon, but claims some were U.S. citizens is being disputed. U.S., Canada, Australia formally recognize a Palestine state. Wow. I'm officially retard of the week. He 100% wrote his notes from AI. Later in their debate, when he recaps, he puts the book down and reads from the screen the entire time. I don't believe you. How could he? Because the AI would, because if he was using AI, it would have agreed with me. What parts of the debate could have possibly come from AI? Also, doesn't the AI thing give you links to click on for sources when it tells you a thing? So he would just be able to cite the source if it was an AI. I don't think he used AI for it. He bullied it until it helped his argument. His entire argument hinged on the extrapolation from the 6% number in Ben Gurion's private meeting, and he couldn't reevaluate based on new information he provided, specifically in response to both. Yeah, but that's normal for people who only memorize like quotes or little discrete facts. But like, I don't think he would have gotten that 6% number just from an AI, because don't the AIs usually give you more context? Well, I guess I can fucking ask. Hold on. ChatGPT. Bloop, bloop, bloop. Stop. What percentage of the British mandate for Palestine, what percentage of the land in British Mandate for Palestine was owned by Jews prior to 1948, prior to their independence in 1948, question mark. Prior to Israel's independence in 1948, Jews owned a relatively small percentage of the land in Mandatory Palestine. Estimates vary slightly depending on the source and method of calculation, but the figures are broadly consistent. By 1947, Jewish individuals and institutions owned roughly 67% of the total land area of Mandatory Palestine. Okay, that's the number that Myron brought up. Most of this land was concentrated in urban centers like Tel Aviv, Haifa, and parts of Jerusalem, and in specific agricultural... Oh, maybe he did ask AI. Most of the land was concentrated in urban centers, because the next point is the remaining land, over 90%, was owned by Arab Palestinians, Arab absentee landlords, often based in Beirut, Damascus, and other cities, or was classified as state and Miri, Ottoman-era state domain, and administered by the British authorities. Oh no, okay, never mind. That statement is correct. Maybe he just ignored the last part and just assumed that the rest of it was just owned by Arab Palestinians? Wait, do you also want me to break down how these land holdings were distributed? So you can see why a relatively small percentage still had a large impact. Yes, and can you tell me what percentage of the land was owned by Arab Palestinians? Also, wait, why ChatGPT doesn't give me sources? Or can I ask it for sources and it'll tell me? Prior to 1948. Oh, it would. Yeah, I would have to ask it. Okay. By 1947, Jewish individuals and institutions owned about 67% of the land. We've got urban areas, agricultural settlements. Okay, Arab Palestinians, Muslim and Christian alike, collectively owned 40 to 45% of the land, directly in private or communal lands. Much of this is in villages and farms. I feel like that's higher than the number I've seen, but okay, but still not 90%. Okay, and then roughly 50% or more of the land was classified as state domain under Ottoman law and later administered by the British mandatory government. Okay. So I have no idea where you got this, where you got these other numbers from, unless you extrapolated from one AI answer. Okay. Bump, bump, bump. Bump, bump. Stop. The fuck is this? Oh, okay. How long? I thought this was supposed to happen at 4. How dare he be late ever. Andrew Colvett. This was the co-owner of Turning Point USA or something, right? Disney and ABC caving and allowing Kimmel back on the air is not surprising, but it's their mistake to make. Nexstar and Sinclair do not have to make the same choice. Good one, loser. Is this real? Oh, 1995. Never mind. The following statement was released today by Michael Jordan through his personal attorney and business manager, David B. Falk, chairman of Falk Associates Management Enterprises, Inc., located in Washington, D.C., in response to questions about his future career plans. I'm back. Good one. What? So wait, I'm so sorry. I guess maybe I can read this article. We got it. I don't know why we're dick-sucking fucking Argentina. I don't understand.
First of all, the light will defeat the dark. We will prevail over the forces of wickedness and evil. They cannot imagine what they have awakened. They cannot conceive of the army that they have arisen in all of us.
It's so funny that, like, if you would ask conservatives, what did he mean by that? He's like, he's just talking about voting harder. Okay.
Because we stand for what is good, what is virtuous, what is noble. And to those trying to incite violence against us,
thank you very much.
Those trying to foment hatred against us,
so I've been
what
waiting
do you
for this
have?
meeting for 20 years.
You have nothing.
20 years.
You are nothing.
And it's not that everything